Hello everyone, and welcome to the channel. Welcome to the next episode of the Hillbilly Files. For those of you who don't know, my name is Leo, and I will be your host today. And we have a little bit of a story to tell you guys. As usual, I'm in a cemetery, and you never know, like I've said 1,000 times, you never know who you're going to meet in a cemetery. All kinds of historic characters and people with very interesting stories. Every single one of them has a story. But we are here today for one in particular. Matter of fact, it's this one right here. Betty Ann New Tye, T-Y-E. January 29th, 1957 to September 3rd, 1974. Now, this story here is being shared at the request of one of our viewers named Retha, who reached out asking that her sister Betty Ann New's case be told in hopes that it may finally be solved. Retha has lived with unanswered questions for more than 50 years and hopes to see justice for her sister before she leaves this planet. Now, Retha has also stated that she asked law enforcement some time ago to reopen her sister's case, and the cold case was reopened at her request. Betty Ann New was born January 29th in 1957 in Williamson, West Virginia. She was named after her grandmother, Elizabeth Betty Newsome New Crabtree. She grew up in the Nolan and Borderland area of Mingo County and was known to some as Betty Tye, as her stone shows. She was raised by Homer and Gladys Tye. She attended school in the Nolan area before later moving to Florida. Betty Ann New was murdered 51 years ago in Florida. By the early 1970s, Betty was living in Florida near Gainesville. She attended Newberry High School and was just about to graduate in 1974. She was 17 years old. On the evening of Friday, September 6th, 1974, Betty planned to visit her boyfriend, but was unable to find a ride. She decided to hitchhike, which was fairly common at the time. If you was around, you know what I'm talking about. She left some of her belongings at a friend's house and accepted a ride from a neighbor of that friend who dropped her off at a known gathering spot for teenagers in Gainesville. Now, witnesses confirmed seeing her there. That was the last confirmed sighting of Betty Ann New alive. The blonde-haired, blue-eyed West Virginia girl was last seen at a gas station on University Avenue. Later that same day, a freight train stopped on railroad tracks near Barnett's Lake. A railroad brakeman noticed something in a ditch alongside the tracks and discovered the body of a young girl. Local police identified her as Betty Ann New. Her body was found nude and placed in a ditch between a dirt berm and the railroad tracks in a very isolated area. Investigators noted that the location was very remote and believed that the person responsible was probably familiar with the area. Now, despite the short time since her disappearance, decomposition had already begun due to the heat. The medical examiner determined Betty had been stabbed to death and that the attack was very violent. Her death was ruled a homicide, Investigators interviewed friends, classmates, and any others who may have seen her that night. Because she had been hitchhiking, detectives believe she may have accepted a ride from the person who killed her. One witness reported possibly seeing 3 men in the area near the tracks around the time her body was discovered, but no suspects were ever identified. No arrests were ever made, and no individual has ever been publicly named as a suspect. Investigators stated that the location where her body was found suggested that the person responsible was a local, or at least very familiar with the rural area. Betty Ann New's case remains an unsolved homicide cold case to this day. It's officially listed as a cold case. It has been reopened at the request of her sister, Retha, who hopes that the case will finally be solved with new DNA technology. Todd Hand is the investigator on her case now and has worked the case diligently for several years. Since 2004, there have been several detectives that have been on the case, but all have been promoted or retired. Every one of them says that the case is solvable. Over the years, evidence has been preserved and re-examined as forensic technology advances. Law enforcement has stated that DNA testing may still offer a path to identifying who killed her. More than 50 years later, no one has been charged in her murder. Authorities continue to ask anyone with information to come forward. Betty Ann New was 17 years old when her life was taken, and her case remains open now. If Betty Ann New were alive today, she would be 68 years old this year. She would have lived through decades of life that were taken from her. Growing up, holidays, ordinary days, and all of the moments in between that make up a lifetime. Those years were lost. They were stolen from her. But her name and her story and the hope for justice remain. Betty Ann was brought back here to her home and buried right here. You hate to tell stories like that one, but sometimes something like that just kind of jumps out and you feel like that story probably needs to be told, and this is most certainly one of those stories. If anybody does know anything out there, obviously, give law enforcement a call, let someone know. There's still family waiting. Anyway, guys, thank y'all for coming along and hearing our little story. Just thought I would share this old cold case that's been reopened with you guys and put the information back out there. You never know. You never know. You could get lucky. Justice is out there and just very elusive. We appreciate y'all very much. Y'all have a really good day, and we will see you on the next episode. Leo out.